week we're going to talk about the shadow of the lover, from Epstein to the impotent man, and what it's doing to our world. So I want to talk about something that we need to say more clearly in our society, in my opinion. The world is not suffering from too much masculine desire. It is suffering from too much wounded masculine desire. Desire that has never been initiated, never been held, never been given a container strong enough to transform it from hunger into devotion. And that wound is not staying private anymore. It is playing out at a civilizational scale, in our screens, in our culture, in the epidemic of loneliness and the disconnection and rage that is reshaping what it means to be a man in the modern world. Today we're going into the full shadow of the lover archetype, both ends of the spectrum. The men who cannot stop consuming and the men who has stopped feeling entirely, and the collective expression of both that are defining this moment in history. This is not a comfortable material, but it is necessary material. If you haven't watched part 1 and 2, please do so now, and then you can come back to this. Before we go in, I want to establish something important. The shadow of the lover is not the opposite of the lover. It is the lover distorted, the lover wounded, the lover expressing a genuine need through a method that cannot satisfy it. Carl Jung was clear on this. The shadow itself is not evil. It is unlived life. It is the parts of ourselves that were never giving a healthy channel, and so they found an unhealthy one. Which means when we look at the shadow lover in all his forms, including the most extreme and disturbing and even disgusting, we are not looking at monsters. We are looking at men who were never initiated. Men who carry a real hunger for connection, for beauty, for aliveness, for the feminine, and who found no healthy container for that hunger. No elder who said, "This is what desire is for. This is how a man holds it. This is what it means to direct your wanting toward something worthy of it." Instead, they were left alone with the hunger and with the wounds, and the hunger found its own way. And unfortunately, for most men, it is happening in a very distorted way. Now, this does not excuse harm. I want to be very clear about that. The harm caused by shadow lover men or by any toxic men to women, to children, to communities, to culture, to nature, this is real and serious and must be named. And if you also want to check out my other videos about the shadow masculine, about Epstein, about the toxicity of this wound in men, you can check out my channel. But if we only condemn without understanding, we will keep producing the same wound in the next generation. So hopefully now we can talk about the wound, bring everything up from the subconscious to the surface so we can heal it and create a better generation next time. Understanding it is not excusing it. Understanding is how things actually change. And this is hopefully will help us understand. Now, the first shadow expression is the addicted lover. This is the man whose desire has become a compulsion, whose hunger for the feminine, for beauty, because trust me, every man has hunger for the feminine. Every man longs to be returned to the mother herself, the place where he comes from. That is actually the source. That is the God, so to speak, that we have made masculine, which is so distorted, which is another thing that has been hurting men and women and everyone, because when we look at God as masculine, we take away the truth where the source that we all come from is feminine. And so we all long to come back home. We all long to come back to the womb, to the mother, to the feminine. And so we are all really wounded by that. But this is a conversation for another topic. So this is the man whose desire, whose hunger for the feminine, for beauty, for connection, for validation, for erotic experience, has crossed the line from appetite into addiction. He is not hard to recognize. In fact, he is celebrated in many parts of our culture. The man with many women, the man who can seduce anyone, the man who is always in pursuit, always consuming, always moving to the next experience before the current one is fully landed. He's often charming, often magnetic, often genuinely gifted at making a woman feel seen or at least initially, because he has spent his entire life developing that skill. It is his primary tool for getting what he needs. And again, this is very celebrated in our culture. And in fact, these kind of guys, by other guys who are also wounded, they really admire them, which is very, very sad to me. But what he needs is not what he thinks he needs. He thinks he needs the next woman, the next conquest, the next hit of desire reciprocated. But what he actually needs is to be still, like just be still and present long enough to feel what is underneath that hunger that he has. And the hunger will not let him be still. That's the irony, because underneath it is something he cannot face. The original wound, the original emptiness, the place where the mother's love was not enough or was not real or was conditional on his performance. So the addiction is not about sex. The addiction, it is about the attempt to fill through external means a void that was created internally. And this is the problem. Now, let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein, for example. He's the extreme end of the spectrum as an example that we're giving here. And I did a couple of videos on Jeffrey Epstein before. And I want to name him not for shock value, but because he represents something important in our society right now. He represents what happens when the addicted lover is given unlimited power and zero accountability. When there is no container, no initiation, no elders, no feminine mirror that does not simply reflect his wealth and status back to him, right? What he has around him, his toxic feminine, which are afraid of him and are mirroring his shadow, but not in a good way, not in a way that he can grow and be initiated. So if a man does not have healthy feminine around him, there's no way he's going to be initiated. The desire becomes entirely self-referential. The women cease to be people. They become objects through which he attempts to feel something, anything that approaches the aliveness the lover archetype is meant to provide. And the more he consumes, the emptier he becomes, because no amount of external feminine can fill an internal wound. But Epstein is not just a monster at the extreme. He is a warning about a direction that begins much earlier, much more quietly in much more ordinary men. The men who cannot be faithful, not because he does not love his partner, but because fidelity requires him to stop running long enough to feel what is actually there between them. When he's not present, he can't actually go deep with his one woman. And that's the gift that he has, but he's not taking it. And what is actually there might include his own emptiness, his own need, his own fear of being truly known. The man who is addicted to pornography, not because he's simply weak or immoral, but because pornography offers the simulation of the feminine without the risk, without the vulnerability, without the possibility of rejection or demand or the terrifying intimacy of being actually seen. The man who needs constant female validation, the likes, the attention, the evidence that he is desirable, because without it, he cannot locate his own worth. The man who collects experiences rather than building depth, who mistakes novelty for aliveness and intensity for intimacy. All of these are expressions of the same wound, the same hunger, the same desperate attempt to get from the outside what was never sufficiently given on the inside. Now, the opposite collapse is less visible, less dramatic, less obviously destructive, and in some ways more widespread. This is the impotent lover. Let's talk about him now. That's the man who has shut desire down entirely, not through discipline, but through survival. He learned early through rejection, through abandonment, and through the experience of opening and being met with nothing or with punishment, that desire was dangerous, and that wanting was humiliating, that the vulnerable place in him that reached for connection was the most dangerous place of all. And so he sealed it. He built a life around not needing, around self-sufficiency, around the performance of having it all together while the interior slowly went dark. He is the dreamer who never acts, who has beautiful visions for his life, for his work, his relationships, that remain permanently in the future, because the moment he actually moves towards what he wants, he actually have to risk wanting it. And wanting means the possibility of not getting it. And not getting it is the thing he has spent his life organizing himself to avoid. You see what's happening? He is the nice guy, endlessly agreeable, endlessly available, who has mistaken the absence of conflict for the presence of love, who gives and gives and gives, not from fullness, but from fear. Because if he stops giving, the person might leave. And if the person leaves, the original wound again is confirmed, that he's not enough, that he was never enough. He's also the man who intellectualizes everything, who can discuss feelings in sophisticated, articulated language, right? While remaining completely untouched by them. Who has made his intelligence into the ultimate defense against his own interior life. He's also the man in the long relationship who loves his partner genuinely, but cannot seem to close the last distance between them, who is present but not there, who gives her almost everything except the things she actually asking for, him, fully, without the protective layer. And he is, in his most culturally visible form right now, the incel. Yes, the man so convinced of his own unworthiness, so certain that the feminine is permanently close to him, so armored against the possibility of rejection, that he has converted his lover wound into ideology, into rage, into a worldview that positions women as the enemy rather than the mirror of his own under-addressed pain. The incel is not a new kind of man. He is an ancient wound wearing a modern costume. The impotent lover who found a community of other impotent lovers and built a theology of bitterness around their shared wound. That is what unaddressed pain does when it goes long enough without witness. It hardens, it weaponizes, it turns inward and then outward. This is very sad because unfortunately, we see so many of these wounded men in our society today. Now, I want to zoom out a little bit because what I have just described is not only happening at the individual level. Like I said, it's happening at a scale, culturally, collectively, and it is reshaping the world in ways we are only beginning to understand. First is pornography, right? Is the addicted lover institutionalized? It is an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars, built entirely on the premise that the masculine hunger for the feminine can be satisfied through consumption rather than connection. It cannot, but it can be monetized endlessly. And the cost to men's capacity for real intimacy, to their nervous system, to their ability to be present with real women and in the real body with real needs is enormous and almost entirely undiscussed. And then we have the hookup culture. This is the addicted lover normalized. The cultural message that commitment is naive, that desire should always have an exit, that choosing one person is a limitation rather than deepening. This is the addicted lover's worldview elevated to a lifestyle philosophy, and the men and women living inside of it are often lonelier than they have ever been in their lives. We have the rise of men like Andrew Tate. This is the shadow lover packaged and sold as strength. Here is a man offering a very specific solution to the lover wound. If the feminine has rejected you, reject it first. If intimacy is dangerous, make invulnerability into an identity. If you cannot receive love, turn the inability into a brand. The men buying what Tate is selling are not stupid. They are wounded. They are the impotent lover who found someone willing to validate his armor rather than help him remove it. And that is an extraordinary appealing offer to a man who has been told his whole life that removing his armor is weakness. Now we also have the collapse of the long-term commitment. This is the addicted lover's endless options made cultural. The man who cannot choose, who keeps one foot out in every relationship, who mistakes the aliveness of new connection for evidence that this relationship is not the right one. is not suffering from too many options. He is suffering from an inability to tolerate the intimacy that comes after the beginning. The part where the other person becomes real, where the projection fades and the actual human being appears, where love requires presence rather than pursuit. Now we have also the disconnection of men from beauty, from nature, art, and from feeling. It is the impotent lover collectively dominant. A culture that does not teach men to be moved by beauty products. To be moved by beauty produces men who cannot be moved by much at all. And unmoved men who without access to their own feeling, their own emotion, their own inner feeling life, make decisions from fear and habit rather from wisdom and love and genuine connection. This is the world the lover wound has built, and it will not be fixed by better policy or better education or better dating apps. It will be fixed slowly, one man at a time, by true initiation, by the willingness to go into the wound and come through it, by men who are willing to face what they are actually carrying and discover that what is underneath the hunger, underneath the armor, underneath the addiction and the numbness is not emptiness. It is the lover himself, the divine part of the lover, waiting. So one more thing before we close, I want to say. Every shadow that we have protects something real, right? The addicted lover's compulsion is protecting a genuine hunger for connection and the aliveness that was never met in a healthy way. The impotent lover's numbness is protecting a genuine capacity for feeling that was met with too much pain. Underneath the shadow in both directions is the same thing. A man who wants to love and be loved, who wants to feel fully alive, who wants to be in genuine contact with beauty and with the feminine and with his own interior world, who never found the container safe enough to let that be real. That is not pathology. That is humanity. That is the lover wound wearing the only clothes he was given. And the path forward is not more judgment, not more shame, not more cultural condemnation or of broken men. It is initiation. It is the creation of containers strong enough, honest enough, and safe enough for men to finally put down what they have been carrying and discover what is underneath. So in the final video of the series next time, we're going to go into another principle, the constancy principle, what it actually means for a man to integrate the lover, what devotion looks like as a lived practice, what has to die for the lover to be born, and what becomes possible for a man and for everyone around him when the lover finally comes out integrated. In this video, if this video stirred something up in you, good, let it steer. Don't rush to resolve it. The lover does not respond to urgency. He responds to honesty. Sit with what you felt listening to this. Allow this feeling to be information for you. Observe yourself. And I will see you in the next video. If you want to work with me, join the Godman program, the one-on-one initiation with me as your priestess, and also sign up to the waiting list for the threshold, the most intense, real initiation retreat for men, 3-day intensive for men. Only 20 men are allowed. You're going to have to book an interview with me to see if you're aligned with this. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Please subscribe, like, and share so I can continue making these videos and share the work of the temple. And may the goddess bless you all.